Finishing more songs is a funny topic because it's the one thing that will literally define your career, yet so many artists see it as a massive undertaking. They're great at starting, but when the song gets near to a state of completeness, it just kind of stops. And that moment of stopping could be costing you a potential career-defining moment. I've made over 1,000 songs as a professional music producer, and in that time, I've learned how to take those near-done songs and get them over the line, completely finish them off, both for myself and the artists that I work with. So in today's video, I'm going to show you the one thing that I do that takes my song from that near done state and get them Spotify ready. If you can master this, it will allow you to release more, grow your catalog, build new fans, produce for other artists. Basically, whatever you want to do, it's in the hands of getting more songs done. Before I dive in though, I work with a select few alternative pop artists every single month to help make their music, either by producing for them or offering guidance on their own music, more like a done with you sort of approach. If you want to get in on the wait list, click the link in the description and book a call with me. We'll chat a bit about what you need and see if there's any way that I can help. So how do we actually finish more songs? Well, I'm going to assume that you've got the song written, recorded, and produced, and you basically are now wanting to get it over the line, send it home. Being an artist myself, when I was starting my artistic journey, I was releasing one song every 2 weeks. And I did that for over 2.5 years. I now release less frequently, once every month or so now, but the same principle still applies. I need to be able to work quickly and get songs done fast because at the time, I was also working with so many other people as well, and I couldn't jeopardize my sessions and work with them just because I wanted to focus on my own stuff. So I needed a quick way to get things done. And the easiest way that I found was something called top-down mixing. And the easiest way to think of it is like a big tree. Essentially, you start your song by mixing at the very top, or the master chain. This would be the trunk of the tree. You then work your way to the mid-level where you have groups of tracks, also known as buses. These are the branches that come off the main trunk. Then you finish at the track level. These are the smaller twigs and leaves that stem from the main branches. Each section of this tree will have its own chain of plugins that will shape the overall sound. And today we're going to focus on the main trunk of the tree, so the master chain. Essentially, this is where you get the most bang for your buck. The way that you treat the trunk will affect the entire health of the tree. So in short, if you want a healthy sounding song, you want to start with the master. The reason this is so powerful is because you don't need to do much to make big changes. You can keep everything minimal, which will preserve the life, dynamics, and generally the overall feel of your song. And it lessens the work you need to do later, which is always a plus. So the question is, how do you go about doing this? Well, I'm going to show you a song of mine that I recently finished called Tell 'Em. And this is how the project looks. You can see that I've got all of my individual buses here, my groups. These are the branches. And then if I open them, you can see that I've got all the individual twigs that come off of that. And then if I just go over to my mixer here, you can then see this is my master output. This is the trunk. I'm going to show you what the song sounds like with everything on, and then I'm going to show it with you off so you can hear the difference, and we'll go over to the main chorus here. This is part of the game, and we play it on replay, and we ask if we're sane. I heard that you want it the same, so don't wait for the day that you want make it rain. I've been up and down like rolling stones. I've been on the line up in my own. And that's the only way I'll ever know. Tell 'em how it is. Tell 'em how it is. Yeah. So you can see the difference is insane. And they're not doing huge amounts. So I'll show you what they are. So my mastering chain is split into two parts. The first part being the chain that I basically start and produce into. This is the thing that coats the entire mix, so I'm closer to the finished sound whilst I'm producing. I also do this to tame peaks so that we don't get any clipping early on in the production session. The first thing that I use is a virtual tape machine. And what this is doing, this is adding just a little bit of harmonic warmth here. So in short, you want some kind of saturation. I would recommend a tape emulation just because they're quite good. This is something that you would probably run your actual song through in an analog studio. This one adds a little bit more beef, a little bit more bottom end, and I don't think I'm clipping too much in the red. Let's check. This is part of the game, and we play on replay, and we ask. Yep, it's just catching a few of those peaks just every now and then here. That's all it does. The next plugin in the chain is a soft clipper, and I'll show you what this is doing. This is part of the game, and we play on replay, and we ask if we're sane. I heard that you wanted to say. So if you're not sure what's going on here, pay close attention to what this little node is doing on this line here. And you can see that I'm actually clipping, let me just reset this, at about... Yep, so we're clipping at around about 3.8 decibels there. So that's coming up and it's running into this curve here. I'm doing this because it then stops me clipping on the output. I then also start my session with the Oxford Inflator. This plugin is insane. Basically, it controls the dynamics and makes your song sound more even, but it doesn't affect the dynamics too much. It still sounds very natural. It doesn't sound squashed. Now, you can go quite extreme with this and it can sound pretty nasty. And what I tend to do is when I then move into my second stage of the master chain, I will tend to address these settings just to find one that I like, but I generally keep it on as I'm recording into it because it just gives me a nice even sounding song overall without having to do anything to the actual buses or main tracks. The second stage is when I've then done the entire production and I'm going into the mixing part of my record. So this is where a bit of philosophy comes in. I like to step back from my record and ask myself, what is the context of what I'm trying to achieve here? And what I mean by that is, where does this song live in the sonic world? In this case, I am an alternative pop artist, so I like to have some brightness, I like to have some punchiness, and I like to have good energy without things being too squashed, you know. I then go, okay, now let's listen to the overall song. Let's step back for a minute and let's pay attention to what the song needs overall. The first plugin I added was the Violet EQ here. And this is just a very, very simple EQ. And I boosted at 30 Hertz here and then pressed the fat button because we love fat bottom end. And then I boosted the highs here, the really high highs. So this is 20 kilohertz. This is going to give you the air and the sheen on a record. And I'm boosting that by 3, boosting the low by 2. And I'll do it without and then with. This is part of the game. Then we play on replay. Then we ask if we're same. I heard that you wanted the same, so don't wait for the day that you want to get it. I mean, just in that little clip there, you can hear the massive difference with it in and out. When it's in, it just gave it so much more energy. If I'd have done that at a track level, it would have taken way more plugins, it would have taken way more time and been way more taxing on my computer system. Whereas here, I just boosted it on the entire thing and it was done. The next plugin that I added was a bit of stereo width. I'm a sucker for really good stereo width on a track. Even if I think the track is wide enough, I'll sometimes add a smidge of this anyway. This is my personal preference. And that's where you want to ask yourself, what do you want from this? Do you want the whole thing to feel more narrow, to feel wider? So that's what I did. I boosted the width and then carved out a bit of space at around the 280 Hertz mark here. I then always finish off with Ozone 11. Now, you could call me a bit of a cheat here, but I use the AI section here. So I click on this button and I click play. It listens, analyzes the track, and then gives me some settings. If you do something like this, I do recommend that you do go into the plugin and you actually reduce how much it's doing because it will do an extreme version of what you ask it. At the top level, you want to make your changes small and subtle because it affects everything in the mix. So the smallest move sounds more dramatic. So the first thing that it did for me was add an equalizer, and I've got this kind of a mount slider here. I've got it at 53% there. And I think it was at about, 100% like this. So you can see the curve was quite extreme. And then I kind of dialed in what I thought was really, really nice. So I would dial it in and then I would just A/B it. So I would then bypass the plugin and listen with and without. The next plugin that it used was Impact. So I was not really sure how this plugin worked, but upon actually really diving into how this affected my track, I then learned exactly how it works. And so what it does is it reduces the dynamic impact of a particular frequency band. So for example, in my bottom end here, typically with pop songs or alternative pop songs and especially dance music, you want the bottom end to be really consistent. Also in hip hop as well, you want the bottom end to be consistent. If I increase this impact slider here, it adds more dynamic variation to that frequency band. Well, in the bottom end, that's not going to be very consistent. So what you do is you reduce it and it just levels everything out. And so it does that at all these different frequency bands. Anyway, I actually went in and completely adjusted this myself. I think it had everything down at the bottom. but I thought I want a really consistent bottom end. I want a smooth mid, a slightly more dynamic high mid, and then a really smooth top end. So that's why these are down here. The next is the imager. So it always throws this on. Again, I quite liked what it did, and then I adjusted a few settings here. So with this imager versus the first one that I have a bit more control here. And I always like to bring down the bottom end here so you can see this bottom frequency band, which goes up to 120 hertz here. I like to pull that down a little bit more, make the whole bottom end a little tighter. I did a little bit on the mid-range band here. I think this might have been what the AI came up with. So that was cool. And then I like the way that it spread out the top end there. That was nice. And then the bottom end, we just pulled it in ever so slightly here. The next three plugins here, these are dynamic plugins. And these next two, Clarity and Stabilizer, these are really, really fun. I really enjoy these plugins, but you have to use them sparingly. So let's turn on Clarity and I'll show you what's going on here. What this does, this basically gives more clarity to wherever you set these sliders here. So anything above 300 hertz is now going to be given more clarity. You can adjust the tilt, so whether it's darker or brighter. You can adjust the attack and release, and then of course you can adjust the amount. They always set it at 25 for this plugin module, but I think it's a bit too much, so I just pull it back. With Stabilizer, this essentially just stabilizes the entire mix. So you set the kind of curve that you're shooting for. In this case, it decided on pop. And then it kind of shapes the tone of everything to better match the curve that they've got predetermined in this. And then the final thing that it adds, which I love what this plugin does every time, I never ever touch this, it basically finds any resonant frequency areas of the track, and then it basically controls them with some dynamic EQ here. By bringing down some of these resonant heavy frequencies, it allows us to push a bit harder into the limiter, which is really, really cool. And then it does always give the maximizer. I turn this off because I use a different one, which I'll show you in a moment. But yeah, let me just bypass the entire of this plugin here, and then we'll add it back in.
This is part of the game. Then we play on the play. Then we ask if we're sane. I heard that you want it the same, so don't wait for the day that you want make it rain. I've been up and down like rolling stones. I've been on the line, I'm on my own, and that's the only way I'll ever know. Tell them how it is. Tell them how it is.
It's actually ridiculous how much more that adds to the overall song. So sounds really, really awesome. So just by making those moves, and you can see that some of them were a little more exaggerated, but a lot of them were quite minimal, I'm now closer to the desired sound that I want. Once I've done that, I then move into the mixing and I go down and start affecting all of my individual buses here and start doing my mixing and applying the same principles to those as well. So I listen to that individual bus in context, or that group of tracks in context of the entire song, and I go, what does this part need? And that's what I dive into there. Once I've done all that and I've been through that entire process, I then just finish off with a limiter here. And if I turn this on, it's going to get a bit louder, so be mindful.
This is part of the game. Then we play on the play. Then we ask if we're sane. I heard that you want it the same, so don't wait.
So this one I'm only doing about -2 decibels of reduction at the loudest point, and that's because I really like the way the dynamics were in this song. They felt really nice controlled. I didn't want to do too much. The other plugins that you see on here are just some plugins for level monitoring and things like that, so they're not super exciting. So once your song is out of the production phase and you're moving into wanting to get it over the finish line, get it complete, try top-down mixing. It will honestly change your life, save so much time, and it just reserves the feel and general vibe of the track that you made in the first place. So it's really, really awesome. As I said, if you're looking for production yourself or some guidance on your own music and you want to get in on the wait list to work with me, I only work with a few artists every single month to help them create career-defining songs. If that's you and you want a bit of that action, check the description, book in a call with me, and we'll see if we're a good fit and if I can even help you. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.